And in this video I'm going to talk about pollution in China, Taiwan, Korea, and also a bit about Japan. I've taught English in China, Korea, and Taiwan. I spent about 2 years in Taiwan, 3 years in Korea, and about 6 months in China. I've also visited Japan a number of times, usually just for a short time. So anyways, in 2004 I started teaching in Taiwan. In there, the thing with pollution, I would say, is scooters. This is the big one. You know, in Taiwan, there's, last I knew, 23, 24 million people on an area that's pretty small. Most of them are on the west coast, and there are millions of scooters. And the laws there aren't very strict, you know, about... I think in Taipei they're more so, but in the other cities it's not very strict. The emissions regulations and that stuff. So that's the big one. That's the big. You know, you see people driving around in scooters with smoke coming out of the back, and yeah, people are kind of ignorant. You know, they just don't know about. You know, I think things are getting better. Factories in Taiwan, there's not really that many factories now because most of the factories are moving to China. So the Taiwanese factories are moving to China. So there's not that many, you know, factories in Taiwan anymore compared to, you know, what they used to have. So that's the big one, scooters. And they're noisy too. So, I mean, if you're going to be anywhere in a city on the west coast, I'd say it can get pretty, you know, the fumes from scooters, you know, the exhaust can get pretty bad, and that could get to you. The other thing I would say about, and the noise, you know, they can be pretty noisy too, some more than others. If you're going to go to Taiwan, I'd recommend that you get a 4-stroke. If you're going to have a scooter, I'd recommend getting a 4-stroke scooter. They tend to pollute less, and they're also a bit more powerful too. And yeah, so I'd recommend that if you're going there. Other thing in Taiwan for pollution, probably noise pollution. You know, the fruit guy will be, you know, driving around in his truck and have some loudspeaker, and he's selling fruit. Or politicians do this too. You know, they drive around in their vans or their trucks, and they got some loudspeaker. It's so loud, just going through the neighborhoods. So that's another pollution. One thing that's common in all these places, well, I can't speak for Japan, but people are pretty careless about throwing stuff on the ground. Like, you'll see people just, you know, throwing, you know, cigarette wrappers or cigarette, containers. They just throw it on the ground. You know, they just don't care. That happened in Korea, China, Taiwan. I saw that fairly frequently. Or you know, you go to the 7-Eleven or whatever, and you get a drink, a beverage. They'll just throw the container on the ground too. Taiwan, yes, and sometimes you'll see trash, just random trash piles, like kind of in the countryside. I'd say Taiwan and Korea, and then 2007 I went to Korea, and I lived in Korea for more than 3 years. And when I first got to Korea, I was like, wow, this is much cleaner. You know, there's no scooters. Well, they have, some people drive scooters, but nothing like Taiwan. So yeah, man, my first impression was like, wow, this is better. It's cleaner. It's not as polluted. So I'd say, and I lived in Busan. I got to back up a little bit to Taiwan. In Taiwan, pretty much the west coast is pretty populated. However, the east coast of Taiwan is it's beautiful and it's really nice. So if the pollution is something that's going to get to you and you're interested in Taiwan, I'd recommend the east coast. I mean, it's beautiful. Not many people live over there, and pollution will be pretty minimal, actually. And back to Korea. So I lived in Busan and Changwon for a short time, and it never really got to me, like smog levels in Taiwan. could get pretty smoggy. I lived in Tainan and Taichung, which is like the third and the fourth largest city. So the pollution, yeah, sometimes it could get really smoggy in those places. Taipei and Kaohsiung, I think, is fairly similar. Taipei's kind of in a bowl. Actually, Kaohsiung might be a bit better. It's on the ocean, and I saw a lot of blue skies there. Though I've seen blue skies in Taiwan, Taipei too. So the city matters a bit where you're gonna be, or how the pollution's gonna be. In Busan, it could get smoggy sometimes, but I saw plenty of blue skies there, and it's on the ocean, so it never really got to me. Again, I'd say there, people are careless with throwing stuff on the street. And the strange thing about Korea is you'll be hard pressed to find a trash receptacle, some place to throw your trash, a can or something like that. They just can't be found, public ones, on the street or sidewalks. You just can't find these. So again, yeah, people just will you'll see people throw stuff in the streets. Yeah, so Korea, I say Korea compared to Taiwan is definitely better. As far as pollution goes, there's hardly any scooters there. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. And China, I lived in China for about six months. And I lived in Shanghai, and Shanghai is 19 million people. Some people really careless, just drop it in the street, keep rocking like it's nothing. And nobody's gonna say anything, except for you maybe. I did sometimes. I picked it up, handed it back to them, So it could be, China and smoggy. I mean, actually Shanghai, they say Shanghai is one of the cleaner cities in China. And considering how big it is relatively clean. Considering how big, you think 19 million, in one area. And they say it's, there's no factories in Shanghai. So they say it's cleaner than a lot of cities that are much, much smaller than Shanghai. So in nighttime, at the end of the day, walk around the neighborhood, you can see a lot of trash in the streets. At nighttime, people come, they sweep it up, pick it up. So actually, when I went to Taiwan, or I went to China, that was after, first was Taiwan, then Korea, then China. I wasn't, and I spent most of my time in Shanghai, but I traveled a little bit on the East Coast. And it really wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, actually. I mean, Shanghai could get pretty smoggy, but, again, there were blue sky days there. So, and I think it's getting better. I mean, there's electric buses in Shanghai and really cool electric bikes. They're like super quiet. You can't even hear them coming. And a lot of people ride those. And there's not like scooters. I mean, there's some motor scooters, but most people ride these electric ones. And yeah, so I don't know, I adapted to it. So I think everybody's experience is a little bit different with that, but yeah. So I'd recommend China and Japan. Japan is, if you're really worried about pollution and you want to go to Asia, then go to Japan, because Japan is the cleanest place by far out of all those. Next, I would say number 2 would be Korea, 3 Taiwan, and 4 China. But again, it probably depends a little bit where you're going to be. Or where you're going to be in that country. I mean, if those things really get to you, then you might want to try like a rural location, So, yeah, that's pretty much my 2 cents on pollution in Asia. This is a drawing that I did. I started in 2004 when I was in Taiwan, and I picked it up again and I kind of reworked it a little bit and glued it to a background because it was all wrinkly, and I just kind of. So it's called Uprooted. Here this says hot pot, which is huoguo, common dish in Taiwan. Kambugenda wenza, invisible mosquitoes. And this one is Komchi Urin, air pollution. Right? These are kind of roots, like roots going up and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it. Hi, just a quick thing I just remembered about China and pollution. Probably one of the toughest things would be smoking. And actually it wasn't in China. This happened, it was mostly in China, but I definitely remember this happened in Korea too. People would smoke in the restaurants. Not every restaurant. However, there's some restaurants that just, they don't care. People just light up. There's no rule that tells them they should or shouldn't smoke. And when I was last in China, they had supposedly passed some law that they can or something, but nobody follows it, you know? So this was tough, you know, people just light up in the restaurant and start smoking. And, you know, I suppose if you smoke, you don't mind. People, they just smoke and they throw their butt on the floor. Sometimes people throw their napkins on the floor. It's normal, you know? It depends a bit, you know, the nicer restaurants, these kind of things wouldn't happen in China. But the more local establishments, smaller restaurants, you'll see this, you know, the floor will be nasty and all kinds of rubbish on it from people just, you know, tossing it on the floor. So I just wanted to add that, something I just remembered, okay?